Okay. More on America and the life of rights and the shadow. You know, I just told you this story about these annual general meetings that go on in America and the kind of resistance that there is that comes through the shadow forces to keep us asleep. And of course you won't hear this stuff coming out of the councils in America or Dornoch because they are in fact asleep. Alright, so here we are. We're trying to wake up. We're trying to get it. Okay, so let's do some Steiner. People like to quote Steiner, so let's do some Steiner. Now Steiner said some very interesting things about all of this. He said, for example, that English speakers are instinctively in the consciousness soul in their life of rights. And this is in Challenge of the Times lectures. He said, Europeans have to be educated to the consciousness soul, but English speakers are instinctively in the consciousness soul in the life of rights. Now that's one of those things that Rudolf Steiner said that people call an indication. And I sort of think the guy's very subtle, but what he's really doing is saying, yay, pay attention to this, think about this, put your head around that. So what happens when you put your head around it? Well, I've been putting my head around it for years, okay? And the number of things that I can say about that are huge. I could do a whole thing on David Kelly, for example, who's a good example of an American thinker. I call him American. It's Shakespeare. And he's created a lot of television dramas in which the denouement of the dramas takes place in a courtroom. Okay, now where else could you get closer to the life of rights than things taking on in a courtroom? And he talks a lot about, in his dramas, about things that go on in America and the life of rights. But let's just go straight forward to America a little bit, you know. Let's recall some history. Doesn't hurt. America didn't just sort of appear out of nowhere in the sense that we talk about modern America as a nation and a people and a state. And when it did appear, one of the ways I described it in my own writing was that the U.S. Constitution was kind of a seed. And in that seed was contracted all the political wisdom that existed in Western civilization up to that time. As a result of the Enlightenment and the Reformation and all kinds of other things, you had this group of very unusual personalities that had incarnated together in America to be part and parcel of what was going on. And we call them the founders. And of course the founders weren't just men. As we've gotten more into the mother forces, there's been some revisionism of the founding mothers and their relationship to the things that went on in the background, you know. Behind a lot of great men, there are great women. All right? So let's not go to sleep about this, all right? Anyway, so in the founding of the United States of America, you have a document that comes into existence called the U.S. Constitution. And it's preceded by two other documents, one that's official, that's the Declaration of Independence, and the other one that's less official, which is the book by Thomas Paine, Common Sense. Now in those places are expressed certain ideas, and these ideas are a kind of digested concentration of the leading thoughts of the Enlightenment on politics. Because the men that wrote these things, by and large, read books, and they read books by Europeans about various kinds of things, about what government should or should not be, how it could or could not do whatever it's going to do, okay? So let's have that picture in mind, that we have this sort of distillation and concentration of the political wisdom of European history up to that point in time being concentrated in the United States of America and the creation of the Constitution and in the ideas of the Declaration of Independence, and also in Thomas Paine's Common Sense. These are the founding documents. All right, let's put that over here for a minute and set it aside and take up another thing that Rudolf Steiner said. There's 3 lectures published under the title Inner Aspects of the Social Question. And in those lectures, Steiner talks about the fact that if you look at his work on the threefold social order, where we get this idea of the life of rights, you have a cultural sphere, a rights sphere, and an economic sphere. And I'm going to assume some familiarity on the part of anthroposophists that are watching this, and I can't do a big educational thing on people who don't know anything yet. Real anthroposophy sort of assumes some people have some contact with it, and hopefully if you're a newbie to this, I can, what I have to say here will direct you to taking a look at Steiner's social ideas. In the book The Social Future, and the book The Threefold Social Organism and stuff. Anyway, so in these lectures on the inner aspects of the social question, he points out that the cultural life has a relationship to our pre-birth existence. And the economic life has a relationship to our post-death experience. And he's basically talking about what goes on when we incarnate from the spiritual world into a body for a particular life, and then what happens when we're in the early processes of the excarnation. And there's a relationship between these spheres of human activity, which he calls the cultural life and the economic life, and the happenings in the spiritual world prior to birth and after death. The life of rights, however, he says, is entirely earthly. There is no corresponding element in the spiritual world to the life of rights. Okay? Now think about that a little bit. No corresponding relationship between the life of rights and the spiritual world. And one can think different things. I'm just going to say a couple of things on the basis of that, but one can think some different things. And one of the things that one can think is to recognize that the structure and order of the spiritual world that we experience when we're not in a physical body and on the earth has certain rules and laws. And these rules and laws are, shall we say, entirely moral. But when we're on the earth, we're in that place where what's being evoked in us is in fact our capacity to be moral. We're being challenged by our earth existence to develop our moral existence. And in the age of the consciousness soul, this is one of the things that's being developed. Remember, take it back from over here. English speakers are instinctively in the consciousness soul in their life of rights. Okay, so we're weaving that together. Now we're on the earth, and we're in the life of rights, and we're instinctively in the consciousness soul. And there is a kind of juxtaposition between earth existence and our moral nature that's going on. So let's pause and come back, and I'll do some more.